Kia ora everyone, we'll probably look to kick in this morning. So morena and welcome to the Future Farmers session. This morning is going to be a session of inspiration, stories and solutions is the goal. So we're going to start with a wee bit of a panel discussion, then we're going to jump into a bit of a facilitated solution session, which we'll talk you through soon, and then come back together as a group at the end. But we can start with introductions. Tēnā koutou katoa, no Ingarani o Katupuna, no Wāpa Hau, ko Manako te Moana, nei aku maharahara, ko Pukakoe te Puki, ke te nohu o ki o te tahi, ko Blake, toku whānau, ko Amy, toku ingoa, tēnā koutou katoa. So, hi everyone, my name's Amy. I am from the Port Waikato, grew up there. My ancestors are from England, but they settled the area in the early 1800s, and they haven't left since. So I'm the sixth generation on that family farm there. We have a dairy and onion unit, which is pretty cool, but I'm actually based in Christchurch now. So I wear a few different hats. In my day-to-day, I'm a senior consultant at EY. I work in the sustainability team. I also have a charity called Girls Who Grow, which I can talk to maybe a bit soon, but one of my favourite hats that I wear is I'm the co-chair of a group called Future Farmers New Zealand, which is what this morning is about. And I just really want to start with mihi and acknowledgement to Zeb. This is the fourth year I think Future Farmers has had a space at Future Whenua, which is pretty special. It's been an amazing event to be a part of, and we're so grateful to hold this space here. So thank you so much for having us. So Future Farmers is a relatively new group, and I can share a bit of who we are and what we do. We describe ourselves as a united community championing a profitable and healthy food and fibre sector from the soil all the way through to the community. The group, as kind of Zeb talked to yesterday, kind of started in around 2021. The first ever hui was at Lake Hawea Station. I wasn't actually at that hui then, I wasn't a part of the group, but it was about 10 of us that year who wanted to come together and start to talk about solutions to some of the great problems that we were facing. It was kind of a networks group that Finn Ross played a really crucial part of, which is a shame he's not here this morning. But yeah, massive acknowledgement to him as well for the passion and energy he's put into the group. We officially kind of launched in 2023 after spending about 2 years beavering away writing a manifesto for the future of food and fibre, which is on our website if you're interested in having a look. That's an amazing piece of work. That was designed to be a living document, and we officially presented that at E Tupu Boma, the Agri Summit in 2023. Since then, the group's been on a bit of a rocket ship, which has been amazing, and this year I think we've ticked over about 150 members. Hayley, one of those amazing new members who's joined us this morning. But the group at its core is really about having constructive conversations about the future and inspiring sustainable solutions, whether that be environmental, social and economic as well. We kind of operate off three core values. The first is that we're solutions focused. We focus on, again, not just complaining about the problem, but working together to inspire solutions. The second is that we're really diverse and we value those diverse perspectives. The amazing thing about Future Farmers is that it's not just farmers in the group. We have people like myself who are consultants as well as agronomists, PhD students, entrepreneurs, and that's really where the magic comes as well. We have views that span the political spectrum, and we hold the space to have those views together and agree to disagree on some things, but we're still united in the recognition for change. And then the third is that we're evidence and experience based, so we're rooted in leading science and evidence on farm as well. So one of the most inspirational things about the group is, of course, the people within it. And so this morning we're going to spend quite a bit of time just getting to know some of our Future Farmers members. So I guess with that I can start to work down the panel. And we're going to start with, I would love to ask all of you this morning to share a bit of who you are, where you come from, what you do, what your passions are, and also one solution that has inspired you recently that you would like to share with everyone here. So I'll pass to Hayley.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Hayley. I've met, I think, most of you, and I introduced myself a little bit yesterday. But yeah, I'd love to share a little bit more. So as you can tell by my accent, I am originally from California in the United States. My dad's side of the family are farmers here, used to be farmers here in Aotearoa, Masterton specifically. So my dad grew up on a farm, and they recently sold that farm. He moved to the States when he was in his 20s and would tell me stories here and there about life in New Zealand, and not too many. So I became curious, and I followed that to New Zealand about 4.5 years ago. I didn't realize that I'd be stepping into the agricultural world. But now that I'm here, I'm realizing that a lot of my, I want to say DNA, and inquiry and curiosity about the food sector feels driven by that family background and wanting to explore more and wanting to be a part of a solution. But yeah, I began my career back in California as a qualitative researcher, so really looking into the connections between people and land. Here in New Zealand, I studied a Master of Environment and Society and began working with plant and food research, where I worked on several projects relating to social science and food and how people are interacting with their food and how people are learning about food and discovering different qualities and different pathways toward new food innovation. And then I got recruited for a PhD, which I'm doing now. I chose the topic of regenerative agriculture from my personal interest in wanting to really dive into what it is and why it is that we have gotten to where we are with our food system. And I think, my topic is, as I explained a little bit yesterday, about understanding the market interactions, so spanning from farmers to consumers and how and why values are translated as we are moving toward this really exciting time, I would say, of solutions, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But for me, I initially, as I said, kind of wanted to explore this background, but I also found, as many of us have some health issues relating to what I was eating that I was blind to most of my life. And with that kind of discovery, I started to, first get overwhelmed by the fact that our food system is the way it is, and that over the years turned into excitement because I realized that we are moving toward a society that is becoming more educated, that is quickly turning things around because we're realizing the positions that we've been placed in and have, slowly but surely turned this into activism that is now spreading. So when I was asked yesterday to think of a solution that I have heard of recently, I immediately started thinking a little bit more broad, and then I saw one of these two running ahead of me as I was pondering that thought. And I just remembered that the solution, or one of the solutions, is bringing our rangatahi into these spaces and bringing kids into these types of spaces. And I thought about community-led projects that involve bringing kids into community gardens. And that's been talked about a lot more recently, is bringing these types of spaces to our schools and starting that education early on of what is soil, how do we grow food, what does it mean to us, and starting those connections early. And that's something that I wish I had when I was a child, so that I could start understanding why, what I was eating was directly impacting how I was feeling. And I feel fortunate enough to be in the position I'm in, to be able to make some sort of contribution to the sector through research. But I think, when I see children that know so much more than I knew at that time, it's really inspiring. And I think it reminds us that these solutions can be exciting and fresh and with new perspective. So that's a little bit about me, and that's a little bit of a broad general solution that we can implement across different local contexts, and just bring our kids back into the picture and start early. And I'm really excited to be here with these fellow future farmers, and to venture into this awesome space. It's been such a pleasure to have all the different conversations that I've had over the past few days, and I just want to thank everyone for all your contributions. It's truly inspiring.
Thanks,
Pass the mic on now.
Ko Pukione te maunga, ko Motueka te awa, Findle aho. Hey team, my name's Findle. Hopefully some of you have met me. I come from quite a long history of people of the land. As far back as my mother's side, she's Kiwi. Before the first boats in Scotland, people of the land. And then on my father's side in Germany, at least 700 years, as far as we can tell. But a very interesting thing is, on both sides, my grandparents were people of the city, which they were the first generation to do that in both sides, and then they were also the last. So my parents' generation, both were returning to the land. And so they came with fresh eyes, but also with a lot of instincts that had not been lost from their families. And so I watched my father and my mother building an agricultural life again, and all the mistakes they made, all the learnings they had, and the fresh perspective that they brought from their lives beforehand. I grew up on a biodynamic permaculture orchard in the top of the south, just under the foothills of Pukione, the Mount Campbell, the local mountain. And basically they were not told how to do anything, they figured it out themselves. And so that attitude continues in me, I hope. My name is a bit odd, you may think. It's from the Baltic region, and it means the resourceful one. It is quite a handy name to have, I think. If anyone knows me, they know I'm a soil geek. I'm also a people geek. I have followed a yearning to understand many dimensions of life. I've been through university and agronomy training, and I've worked in carbon and ecological monitoring, and now I'm a farmer coach, essentially. So I help farmers make good decisions for their context and their place. I travel all around the South Island and a bit of the North Island, a lot of time in a seat. I love being outdoors. I've been in Future Farmers about 3 years-ish. And it came about because a lot of my friends were in Future Farmers, and then they got their heads together and said, wait, why isn't Findle involved? What? So yeah, the first hui I came to was hui number 2 at Lake Hawea Station, so about 3 years ago. I would describe our crew as people who have already found something that they are doing and are creating change, positive change in the world, and we are just coalescing and bouncing off each other's energy, and sort of encouraging each other. And so that network has served me very well, and I've hopefully served the network. And when I was asked about a solution, I thought immediately that it's up here, because I did a Masters of Sociology when COVID happened, because I couldn't be bothered traveling. No one really allowed it. So getting into people's minds and understanding how they make decisions was my project, and it was very fun. And I was particularly looking at the early adopters of regenerative in New Zealand in grazing. So that happened in 2020 to 22, and it was just 4 or 5 years after the real resurgence of the term regenerative in New Zealand. People like Greg have been doing this a lot longer. There's been a lift in energy recently for many reasons, and I wanted to know why. So I'm happy to talk to anyone later about that. I'm going to keep my thing short, but when it comes to a solution that I'm always in the granular part of things, like, change this input in your farm, or what's the next logical step for this farmer? And quite often it's difficult for people to create the time and space to really redesign their whole worldview. Most of the time they either hit a wall or they have enough space to actually start considering. But that's only really the extreme cases that have a transformation of a perspective. As Melissa mentioned, the levels of change, the really deep ones usually only happen with extreme difficulty. The easier ones that people are much more open to is, here's the next logical step, try doing a slightly different input, try growing a different plant. Observe, observe, observe. If I could say one thing that more people could do is take more photos. Especially farmers. Your photos are now geotagged, you can come back to the same spot and look how it was 6 months ago, 3 years ago. But when it comes to a real profound solution, I would go to be humble. The id and the ego in us, they're strong, but they are not us. So have hope that you can step outside of that and be the student in the room. Otherwise you're in the wrong room.
Kia ora.
Morena, everybody. On my father's side, I'm still learning more, but he actually came from a group of market gardeners, Radley market gardeners, and we've got some old vegetable crates kind of in the background. So actually excitingly taking over part of a greenhouse soon. We're going to be really dialing into that. On my mother's side, for a summer job, she used to work up milking dairy cows, and I got brought up on a really cool lifestyle block north of Auckland. Unfortunately, my second calf from Ag Day, I think, got sent over to China to add to their genetic gene pool. But for me, kind of going through university, I ended up studying engineering and have always been really interested in how you create a business around things to make change. And through my university studies, I came across this really interesting technology around how do you basically create nutritionally superior baby food from beef offcuts, broccoli offcuts, and get that up into the Chinese market. So have kind of followed this journey of technology applied to food and how that sort of gets into market. That sort of transformed into creating texture modified food for elderly and people with swallowing difficulties. So running a food production facility. Had a short spell in an education technology company called Crimson Education, expanding that to 10 countries around the world. And then I went back to help the farmer who was working on the baby food recapitalize the beef farm. And that's when I learned that statistic around, potentially 65% of farmers retiring in 10 years. And I spoke yesterday about how we can sort of bring the next generation into that. And then around that time, it was sort of COVID. I was wanting to potentially create a VR tourism experience and, get that over to China and showcase New Zealand food. I pitched that to kind of the founder of Off-Piste Provisions. He said, food trucks are illegal in China. You can't do that. But he was creating this alternative meat venture. And it actually has a tie-in here to Lake Hawea Station, where we're potentially looking at growing faba beans as an input feed to basically alternative meat jerky and pork crackling. Which was this novel take on, by 2050, if we've got to feed so many people, how can we do it with less resources on the land? And that was a wild journey, starting a new business in COVID times. And it taught me a lot about essentially how difficult it is to get things to market, but also how do we start bringing people on this journey to choose different choices. If we went up there and said, hey, we were vegan jerky, like everyone would just disappear. But if we said, hey, we're jerky, it's nutritional, it's at this price point and it's sort of sustainable, that's when people would start going like, oh, okay, I'll try some of that and, oh, it tastes like venison or so, So that was a big, learning experience for me in terms of how do we enable that change, bring new customers on that journey to try something different. And then, interestingly, out of that, we wanted to support a local Kānuka liquid smoke outfit at the time. They could never commercialize, and sort of my main focus at the moment is helping set up this unit up in Ruatoria, where we can create 15 jobs in the region, create a beautiful Kānuka liquid smoke. I think it'll be the first in New Zealand, and then work with New Zealand brands like, Fonterra and the meat companies to create something with real New Zealand provenance around a flavour profile. I think when people have smoked cheeses, most of it comes from, Netherlands or Europe somewhere, New Zealand exports like $3 billion worth of cheese, and it's just, cheese. Why can't we have like a New Zealand cheese with a beautiful Kānuka flavour? That's my first like food ingredients company, which is another whole level, because you're not necessarily then dealing with consumers who, might buy something on the spot. You're dealing with a company that takes, a year to 18 months to bring a new food product to market. So it's much longer lead times. My roots started in farming. I came to Lake Hawea Station last year for the hui. It was incredible. And then, kind of like Findle mentioned, we're just bouncing around and kind of hearing new insights around people that are, part of the Future Farmers Network and the Future Whenua. Made it up to Northland last year for Future Whenua 24, which was epic. And the solution, which I'm really interested in, and there's a really amazing guy called Tony Sieber, and he talks through these huge disruptive technologies which cause big changes in how systems in the world operate. And one of those, I think, which is really interesting in New Zealand, especially in the food supply chain system, is this idea of autonomous delivery and autonomous delivery with electric vehicles. So that means that you can maneuver goods around, not legally yet without people, but it's coming. And with electric vehicles that can last much longer, you now have really low cost distribution. So typically for a regen farmer who might be selling something to the farmer's market, it's a lot of effort for that regen farmer to supply to the supermarket not buy and support that, right? But how do we create new ways to, allow that amazing produce to get to consumers and redistribute that? If you go and skip traditional distribution, that's sort of 20 to 30% of cost, and then supermarkets charge up 30 to 50% of cost, right? No matter if it's a bad season or a good season, they'll always take their margin. So really interested in that solution of sort of decentralized transport and being able to connect farmers with consumers and try and help that to support kind of like regenerative and get more money back into people that are sort of following those practices.
Kia ora. Thanks, Alex.
Kia ora. I think I've had the privilege of speaking to most of you. So I grew up in South Africa, and I do not come from a farming background at all. I think the only environmental anything in my family is actually my grandpa, who is, my mum grew up on a game reserve, and my grandpa was in conservation, and so they lived, and mum's kind of traumatized by the experience at the back of the truck with, you know, lions jumping up and being chased by buffalo and whatnot. Yeah, and I guess my mum is very rooted in her feeling body and taught us how to connect with the land and that we aren't separate from the land. And so growing up realizing that I am the land is, I think, how I've gotten to this place in my life where I've rooted my understanding of my relationship with the land through this tangible manifestation of food. It's that direct connection that we have back to that more than human world that I think sometimes we don't see but we feel, and I think this is just one of those ways where we can see it more realistically, I guess, in this three-dimensional world. My dad he's an entrepreneur, he's a businessman, and I like to call him a closeted farmer. I grew up, you know, he wouldn't, I don't think he would admit this, but I grew up with vegetable gardens, chickens, you know, just fruit trees. He had planted over 2,000 native species. He turned our swimming pool into a pond. You know, he got everyone in his community. He lived in a gated community. He got everyone in his community to get beehives on their property. Grew, heaps of, I think, over 50 fruit and nut trees. So even though, I guess it's always been passion projects of his, but I think that was sort of my introduction into understanding local food, was just through watching my dad grow these gardens growing up. And then, I moved to the United States at 18, and I had no intention of going to school. And now I'm doing my PhD, and I'm not sure how I've landed up here. But in that experience, the undergraduate university I went to had a 2-acre property where they were growing food, and I was able to work there, and I saw the food coming into the cafeteria, and that was the food they were using to feed the students. And I was, you know, watching that whole process and going through it for the first time was just really, honestly, quite incredible. And they had a massive greenhouse, so I got to do internships, you know, through working in the greenhouse, growing things. And I couldn't believe school could be like that, where you can actually learn practically outside and engage with your environment. And so, I ended up doing a thesis I ended up basing my undergraduate thesis in this eco-village in Scotland. And I went and I studied all these different sort of the economic, cultural, political, really every aspect of what it takes to build an eco-village. And it's called Findhorn, and I think it's the longest eco-village. An eco-village has been around the longest. And so they have a lot of really valuable information to teach. And coming back from that, I realized food was by far the most interesting part of the entire system, the way it brought people together, connected people back to the land, and actually really how a whole community was running around, food and built around food. I've been working in the local food and alternative food networks really in the last 10 years, predominantly in the United States. And then I spent my master's I had a lot of connections to Hawaii, and I'd lived there. I had a lot of relationships there, and I spent a lot of time looking at what it meant to foster indigenous knowledge to sustain food systems within island communities. And which is somewhat how I've ended up in New Zealand, with it being an island community with a lot of indigenous knowledge, to shape what that looks like. And yeah, I guess 2 years ago, just 2.5 years ago, I met some random person hiking in Glenorchy, and he was very personable, started talking to me. He's in the wool industry. I did not actually know this at the time. He was living in Wanaka. He introduced me to Jessie, who spoke yesterday from FreshLink. I'd met with Jessie via Zoom. At the time, I wasn't living in Wanaka. And he had said, he'd randomly sent me an email, and he was like, oh, I think you should go to this summit. You might enjoy it. And this was Future Whenua, the summit that was on Montana Flat. And I ran it by my supervisor, and I ended up there. I packed conference room attire. I did not know what I was stepping into. Gumboots would have probably been a better fit. And when I was there, that was actually where I met Amy, and Amy had told me, have you heard of Future Farmers? And at the time I was new. I'd only been in New Zealand a couple months. And little did I know that actually showing up on the Montana Flat was where almost every connection I've made in New Zealand since then, and every relationship I've built, and really what I would consider my national community and family has started, was on that piece of land. So that's sort of my ties into these groups, and an inspiration, or something that I found quite inspirational, and maybe one actionable step towards a more nature positive future, is recently the Queenstown Lakes District Council granted FreshLink $100,000 to set up a commercial composting operation out at Glendew Station, which is John McRae's property. And for those of you that don't know John, he's just an incredible member of the community, that he's just fostering environmental stewardship, ecological stewardship, and just bringing people onto his land. And so he's offered up this incredible piece of land for us to just bring organic waste from the community and use that to throw back on his property to grow vegetables that he then wants to bring right back into his local community. And I've never been in the composting space, and it's been just really inspirational. I've spoken to some unlikely characters in corporate about getting involved, and the Wanaka community everyone is just so excited. How can we help? What can we lend you? What can we donate to you? How can we be involved? And I think just seeing the community that I'm living in participating in this nature positive project has just been really inspirational, and I think it is playing a pivotal role in how I will approach my professional life post PhD. So yeah, guys, that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, morning everybody. I'm Zeb, son of Rohan and Zella, and yeah, I grew up on a sheep farm. We had about 5,000 sheep, calves when they were affordable. I went to Lincoln University and got a Bachelor of Agriculture, but it wasn't really until I was like 24 when I came back to the farm after some travel and developing an acute awareness of the polycrisis. I started to realize that I actually didn't know how to grow food, and I didn't know how to build stuff, and I didn't know how to fix stuff that well, and that I was like kind of actually pretty helpless, even though I thought I had a lot of skills and capability. So went on a real deep learning journey, and I found that like sort of I was learning a lot more through just my obsessive listening to Joel Salatin podcasts and YouTube videos and all sorts of stuff to do with permaculture and psychology and spirituality and physical health, and just trying to consume as much as possible from like I said, podcasts, YouTube videos, books. I could name a bunch, but I would name Call of the Reed Warbler. I suggest anyone interested in regenerative agriculture. It's just such a great harvest of a whole different aspects of the particularly like regenerative agriculture space. And another one, Climate, A New Story by Charles Eisenstein, was really transformative to me in the terms of it helped sort of open my worldview and really start seeing the earth as a living system where, it was like this state of interbeing that underlies a lot of the solutions that we're talking about. A real mindset shift for me reading that one. And Future Farmers has been an awesome part of my journey. I love the network. We gather twice a year for these huis, and it's just such a quality debate. There's people like really on both sides, and there's no holding back. And it's just done with such integrity and respect for one another. I've been in there from the start. I actually met Finn. It was after a WOW Summit event. You'll hear from Monique Kelly later today. But Damien O'Connor, who was the Minister of Agriculture at the time, was speaking, and Finn was having a yarn, sort of giving him the introduction to this idea about Future Farmers, a group that he wanted to form, and I wanted to wait to invite Damien O'Connor to the very first Future Whenua Summit. So just you've heard a few of these different ones, but it's like a pretty tight-knit group that we're all in, and not too many degrees of separation. In terms of solutions, like on a meta level, I really liked what Jesse brought in yesterday, this kind of 2 years of mandatory service to life rather than to like army service. 2 years on the land, on a farm, upskilling. I think that would be great if people in urban centres went and did that. For one, the land needs more hands, more capable. So if there was like more facilities for that, more quality educators and accommodation out in our rural areas, that's really what the land's called for, and I think 2 years wouldn't be that much of a sacrifice. I think that would only be beneficial to people in it. But I sort of just wanted to talk about a real specific solution we're working on at Mangaroa Farms, where I'm working now, called the Permaculture Orchard. And that's kind of taking this food forest garden principle found in permaculture and bringing it into the straight lines that we're so used to in industrial agriculture. And I think that might make it a little more feasible and scalable. And so what we're planning is like down a line, ideally a north-south orientation. We're going to alternate between a fruit tree, peaches, pears, apples, so on, and then 6 meters down the line there will be a nut tree, almonds, pecans, chestnuts, walnuts, and then there'll be just like a general ecosystem tree, a kowhai, a tree lucerne, a takasasti, a magnolia, something that's just there for the bees, for the soil. And then down the line it will continue with that trio, fruit, nut, service tree, fruit, nut, service tree, and then between the rows there'll be like an 8-meter spacing, and that will allow us to do one up and one down with our tractor, should we decide to mulch and then direct drill a new cover crop in the spacing. And within the row, 6-meter spacings between each tree. Each tree will have 2 bushes, maybe a black currant for our climate, could be a blueberry, could be something else for your climate, and then also about 5 or 6 ground cover sort of shrubby trees or shrubs with each tree would have that. And so that's just going to fill out the whole system down the row, and then we'll have that 8-meter gap in between that we can treat as a cover crop, or if the market garden expands we can do some more long-term crops like potatoes or pumpkins in those alleyways. That's me.
Wow. Kia ora. Thank you so much, guys. Can we just have maybe a little round of applause for everyone there? And that is really kind of just a taste of what Future Farmers is about. What the group holds the space for is to create a new sense of possibility and to reimagine the food and fibre system as well. So hopefully that might have been a little bit of inspiration and some solutions to maybe spark some curiosity or creativity within you this morning. Following this, we're going to actually jump into a very quick group exercise kind of workshop, if you will. So what we're going to do is split everyone into just groups of 4, so maybe just like the 4 people closest to you, and we can run around and help facilitate. But we're now going to get you guys in the solutions seat this morning. And we've heard so many solutions from, education to permaculture orchards, Kanuka liquid smoke, products specifically as well as businesses. But we would love you guys to just ideate. You'll just have 15 minutes in your group to come up with a solution to what could unlock value whilst caring for the whenua in New Zealand. So I can repeat that. What's a solution that could unlock value whilst caring for the whenua as well? So this could be something new, an idea. It also, if you're struggling, could be something existing. So we'll just break into groups of 4, and you have 15 minutes, and then we'll all come back as a group, and the group will just share the one solution that they thought would like to share more broadly as well. So 15 minutes, and you can head out the room, and then we'll come back in. Okay, we hope that you guys had some constructive conversations. We'll now have just one presenter from each group, just a 1-minute, very quick pitch on your solution. Does any group want to go first? Any volunteers? Yeah?
Come up.
Yeah, come up the front. Just hold the sides of it. Be careful not to click the button. Yeah.
Yeah, so our group sort of, the problem that we first came up with was the idea of all of this waste food of market gardens and community gardens and region farmers who aren't quite managing to sell all their produce, and so we had the idea that we might be able to bring some kind of like a community food hub to a market garden or community garden type space where people maybe twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, get together and learn to cook a meal rather than just taking it out of a packet, and there's that social nourishment and food nourishment at the same time. That sort of thing.
Who's next? Just hold on the sides. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I will take feedback when needed from you guys. We initially looked at economic value, thinking value add, that's what we were looking at, and very quickly realized that we didn't want to talk about economics. And our value add piece was about how do we add value via the education system to create resilient, capable, well-rounded kids in a space that values bookwork and knowledge in ways that aren't really conducive to survival in a crazy world. So we also talked about how do we not induce fear in that system, but how do we empower a whole generation of children that are 2 to 3 generations away from capable self-feeding, self-growing, know how to source clean water, etc., warmth type humans. And then off the back of that, we thought, how can we integrate that into a school system that isn't looking at that at the moment, or we can include the Enviro school system. But that goes beyond food. It goes into how Delia talks around building. So how do we, grow a patch of straw on a property, teach them how to make that into a building and get them hands-on? And how can we involve the community and their parents and those types of things? How do they know how to create shelters in an emergency? How to build fires? How to feed themselves? How to use natural resources like all the rabbits in Central Otago? How to forage? What are safe mushrooms? What are safe berries? Because we've been spent 2 to 3 generations being told, don't touch the mushrooms, don't touch the berries, don't touch the anything, when actually the free and easy resources are all around us all the time. We just are separated from the knowledge. So fundamentally, all we need as humans is warmth, shelter, food and water. If it gets down to a point where that's all that matters, then we have an entire 2 to 3 living generations of incapable humans that potentially can't feed themselves. That's my main freak out in the world. Is there anything to add? Okay.
Kia ora, guys. So Toon pointed out that we've got a whole lot of apples and fruit trees around this local area down the road, lining the roads that often go to waste. So sort of our idea was involving the local whenua, the local family, local communities to empower our school kids to pick up some of these products on the side of the road. So our pears, our apples, our apricots, our peaches, everything that Central Otago provides in its abundance. Bring that back to the school, create sort of a value add product, i.e. our apple sauce, something that we had for breakfast this morning, or our rhubarb, or peach compote, or whatever we want to make out of it, and have our school kids learn that art of picking up those fruits, making them into a value-added product, and then distributing them through their community, so they can take what they want for their family, and then they can distribute that and add value to the community by providing those nutrients from what otherwise may have been wasted on the side of the road, or picked up and just taken locally. That's sort of our general idea.
Okay, and here?
Our group was still in the sharing ideas phase, but I've been encouraged to share what I shared. So this is in a pastoral farming context, where the landscapes look pretty different from this. Like on our 40-hectare farm, we have several valley ridge systems, lots of waterways. Like the scale is just shorter and smaller. And in Taranaki, we are having serious stream health quality issues that are getting worse each year. This year, we can't swim in the rivers in many places. And so, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. But just this little idea is that we've got all the steep slopes, that are rutting, eroding, very common on most farms. We've got, the riparian zones, 20 metres each side of each waterway and wetland with spring. So if we can, we can take those out of the system, out of the pastoral system, and put them into forest, right? And by looking at the research, we know that if we do that, the farm profit increases, even though we might be reducing the pastoral grazing area by maybe a third, But that's a really hard sell for farmers. They go, what? No way, that's crazy. What are you saying? So my idea is to add in the layers. It's not my idea, lots of people's idea, to add in the layers into the pastoral system. It could be something as simple as pastured eggs. Of course, you can add the trees over the top. There's a whole lot of different things that you can do there. But I think what I'm thinking is to kind of package it up so that it can be outsourced by the grazing farmer, so that they can just continue their operation, liaise with someone who's coming in and handling some of those extra layers for them, and that allows them to see that they can still maintain and improve a really profitable farming operation, but taking out all of those parts of the landscape that should not be in pasture and needs to go into forest. That's it.
Here? Here you go. Just maybe hold it. Yeah, those sides. Nice.
Both sides. All right. Okay. Quick fire context. We immediately broke the rules and said we're not doing problem solution. Sorry about that. So we went for need. How can we do multiple needs at one time? And so we went from food, with a low income, and then we went to, if we're concentrating on food, what's a really good way to do that and address a whole bunch of other needs at the same time? We then said, okay, there's lots of mental, social, space, identity, connection, or affection, all of these things. How do we address those? And we came up, we came up with allotments. We did. Thank you. I proposed, and everyone can, yeah, good. I'm sorry. Allotments, because it means that people can come. It's a little bit different to a community garden where everyone pitches in, to having your own space, your own place that you can learn, and everyone naturally shares and connects and builds affection and protects the land and connects to their own, very much the land under their feet, and then connect that to farming wider.
Okay, is that all the groups? I think in the Future Farmers group still to go.
Okay, we went to maybe regenerative tourism in the sense where you're doing a week immersion out in nature, some sort of guided experience where you aren't only connecting with nature, but you're connecting with yourself, and we're finding the value in that emotional health and going on that internal journey, which then reflects in the external environment around us.
Cool, and that's everyone, I think. Okay.
I think it's smoko time now. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe we can just quickly wrap up. I did just want to share one other thing that Future Farmers will be publishing pretty soon, and it's called the Future Farmers Statement of Hope. So this hasn't been published yet, but watch the space because it will be getting published really soon. And a core part of it is that Future Farmers believes that agriculture and food and fibre systems hold many of the solutions to the great challenges that we face. So together, we are calling on industry and government to embrace 6 core recommendations, and I just wanted to share those with you this morning. The first is for New Zealand to implement a bold national food and farming strategy, drawing on the wealth of evidence and both formal and informal knowledge systems available to us. Parts of that include establishing a multifunctional land use framework, deregulating small-scale local transactions, as well as empowering communities to be food sovereign. The second recommendation is to establish ecological and food and fibre system literacy nationwide at all levels of schooling. It was really interesting listening to a lot of the solutions that were presented. We really recognise that education is a core part of that and a really deep leverage point to influence change as well. The third recommendation is to establish a national fund for catchment groups. We know the power of these groups, but they desperately need more support and to basically just to go and do the work that they already know that needs to be done. The fourth is to drive farm efficiencies and reduce compliance by really streamlining all farm reporting and data requirements to happen through existing farm softwares and one farm plan that can be provided to national government, processors and investors who all want the same data but can often ask farmers to provide it in different ways. And there's nothing that pisses off a farmer more than multiple people driving down the driveway asking for the same data in a different format. Greg can probably speak to that better than I can. The fifth recommendation is to incentivise outcomes for nature by prioritising nature-based solutions and including and creating supportive finance mechanisms for workable nature-based solutions at the farm level as well, including things like biodiversity credits and reframing the ETS in a way that's actually driving beneficial outcomes. And then the sixth is to improve access to knowledge and applied science by establishing positive grassroots media and establishing an open public source platform for farmers and growers to access digestible science. So those, so those are the 6 recommendations. They'll be published in our Statement of Hope. Our next Future Farmers Hui is actually in April at the Beehive in Parliament. So we're going to talk to the statement and present those recommendations as well. Yeah, so keep an eye out. But thank you so much for your time and solutions this morning. I'm feeling inspired and energised. And with that, now we can go to Smoko.